Wow. All right. Here we go. Excellent. So we're on chapter 9 tonight of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the Katamrita that was originally called. And this is advice to the Brahmos. And of course, the Brahmos, in my understanding, I actually haven't uh, gone to Wikipedia to read their page or anything, but what I pick up from the Gospel and from many, many lectures and conversations that I've heard over the last 20 years or so, the Brahmos were kind of a reformed Hindu movement of sorts. It looks to me, looking in from the outside, as if they were somehow trying to come closer to a Christian presentation or maybe a Western presentation of Hinduism, in that they decided that God was without form only, a few they were trying to reform things about child marriage and dowries and whatnot like that. So it was a movement, and it was closely associated, or Thakur was at least close with quite a few of his disciples, including Vivekananda, who were members of that movement at one time or another. And it's still around these days, although it's quite small now compared to what it was back then. And so here he is with them. He was very friendly with all religions, with all sects and all traditions, and didn't have any problem with that. He took everybody where they were and led them forward from that place, which is my favorite thing about Thakur, actually, is that he's only worried or concerned about you going forward. He's not concerned about your present condition or your present, belief structures or whatnot. He'll learn them and respect them deeply and see where you're standing and point you in the direction that will help you go forward in your path. And so tonight he's going to do that with the Brahmos, hence the name of the chapter, Advice to the Brahmos. I'm going to put on my glasses here. Saturday, April 7th, 1883, so a while back, exactly 100 years before I graduated high school. Sri Ramakrishna was visiting Balaram in Calcutta with Narendra, Bhavanath, Rakal, M, and others. Balaram, at the master's bidding, had invited some of the young devotees to lunch. Sri Ramakrishna often said to him, "Feed them now and then. That will confer on you merit of feeding holy men." The master looked on his young disciples, yet untouched by lust and greed, as the inveritable embodiments of God. Yeah. So he's kind of just, oh, here comes Priya. So he's just kind of putting his disciples in front of the devotees, because he knew that ultimately this group of devotees, I'm going to clean my lens here real quick, sorry, that this group of devotees would eventually become the foundation of the new order that would be started and the new work that would be started, and that he wanted to kind of train them to take care of his monks, to support the effort. And, they in turn took advantage of that freedom provided by that support from the devotees to engage in deep practice and to maintaining their vows as sannyasins ultimately. Of course, at this point, they're not sannyasins. They're just young boys who are interested in spiritual life and have found, to their wonderful blessing and credits, one of the greatest teachers. So the master says, Keshav came on the stage in the role of a holy man and sprinkled the water of peace, but I didn't like it. The idea of sprinkling such water on a theatrical stage after a performance. Another gentleman played the part of sin. That's not good either. One should not commit sin. One should not even feign it. One should not even pretend this sin. The master wanted to hear Narendra sing. The young disciple was not feeling well, but the master's earnest request caused him to sing the accompaniment of the Tanpura. Sing, O bird, that nestles deep within my heart. Sing, O bird, that sits on the kalpa tree of Brahman. Sing God's everlasting praise. Then he sang, Brahman, joy to the whole universe, supreme effulgence, God, beginningless, Lord of the world, the very life of life. And again, O King of kings, reveal thyself to me. I crave thy mercy. Cast on me thy glance. At thy dear feet I dedicate my life, seared in the fiery furnace of this world. My heart, alas, is deeply stained with sin, ensnared in Maya. I am all but dead. Compassionate Lord, revive my fainting soul with the life-giving nectar of thy grace. These beautiful songs. You know, the spiritual life is such a positive endeavor. Of course, we often forget to think and focus on that, you know, to keep that as the main center of our experience of God, this great joy, this great wonder of being free and of being absolutely stainless in the eyes of the beloved. And to celebrate that, you know, that our worships and our singings, even our humming as we wash dishes, is a celebration of remembering that freedom, the promises, the potentials, being reminded of the nature of things being so beautiful, being one of love and light and goodness, and that it's quite often blocked by our wrong thinking. You know, we start going down wrong paths and we can't see that light. So it's wonderful to see these songs, all of them in a row. That sing, O bird, that nestles deep within my heart, that bird that sits on the kalpa tree of Brahman. So he's, if I'm reading that song correctly, I mean that he's suggesting that the kalpa tree of Brahman is existing in your own heart, and in fact, that is true. That the kalpa tree of Brahman dwells within your heart. You will find all of your satisfaction within yourself. You will find all of your strength within yourself because the divine spirit is present there. The divine presence is there. So Narendra continues singing, upon the tray of the sky blaze bright the lamps of sun and moon. Like diamonds shine the glittering stars to deck thy wondrous form. See this he's doing here what we were talking about in this last week. This idea of seeing God everywhere in a palpable way, you know, not as an invisible gas necessarily, but as manifest in all of these things. And so, and poetically, it's okay, you know, for life to become poetry. Please tell Maharaj, what's up? What's going on? Is there something in the comments I need to know?
I was just gonna ask if there's someone in the queue. My friend Shree said he's trying to join.
Okay, just a moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Yes, no, thank you. Because I'm looking down and reading and I'm missing the little pop-up windows. Hello, Shri. Welcome aboard. Sorry you had to wait so long.
No problem. Thanks, Swamiji. Thank you.
Surely. We're on page 199 of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, and we're reading Narendra's song here, and he's anthropomorphizing all of nature at once here. And he's seeing up and looking at the sky and seeing the lights of the sun and the moon and the diamonds of the glittering stars to deck your wondrous form, that this universe is the form. You know, everything, really, we're part of that form too. But as we observe it from our idea of separateness, we see the universe before us as God herself. And we talked a little bit about that yesterday, I guess, and certainly in the retreat this last weekend, about that notion of understanding that what you see is divine. What you see is God, not a separation. This moment is God, not metaphorically. In reality, what you're experiencing and seeing and touching and tasting and smelling now is all of the divine nature, is a direct manifestation of the beloved. It's actually a reflection of that manifestation in the mind of consciousness of God, the presence of God within you. That right now, everything that your senses are showing you are just a mirror. It's a mirror of the divine self within, reflected on the mind, the stuff of the mind, and appearing to you as thought. And to recognize that and to see that. It's a beautiful thing to add poetry to that, and to come up with these beautiful ideas that help us to navigate, to see the world like that. So that unlike in the other song here, where it says, seared in the fiery furnace of this world, my heart is deeply stained with sin. Here comes Walton. Oh, nice. That this world gets very difficult, gets quite troubled. And navigating it successfully is quite treacherous. And so this notion of understanding what we're seeing and what we're experiencing and where the suffering comes from and why the difficulties and why the experience of the world as being this searing, struggle. It's what drove Buddha. He was looking for that answer to how to end suffering, how to alleviate the suffering of people. And this is the beginning of that, to understand that the nature of the world is Satchitananda, to understand that nature of everything together is perfect, and that it all accumulates in this moment as an ever-changing, unrepeating manifestation of the divine story of love happening everywhere. And so to look out and see all of this and to imagine it, God decked within all of that. To deck thy wondrous form, the sweet Malaya breeze blows soft for fragrant incense smoke. The moving air sways to and fro, the fan before your holy face. Like gleaming votive lights, the fresh and flowery groves appear. And you just see that. This weekend we went up into the mountains, as many of you know, for a retreat. And it's the fall colors here in Colorado, and how beautiful to look at such overwhelming beauty and to know it to be of God, to know it to be a reflection of the nature of God. And there's a wonderful sense of faith in that, a sense of relaxing into grace, because you can't help but look at that wonder at every level. Greg this morning or yesterday's class was showing some of the little leaves that he collected from the coloring aspens, and they had those beautiful designs of the yellow going to the red, going to the lime green at the edge, following the veins in the leaf, and just staggering beauty like that. And at every level, when I was walking up in the woods up there, I sat down on a log by a stream at one point to just think, to just contemplate for a while the presence of the beloved. And no matter where you looked and no matter how close you looked, it was a new piece of art, a new expression. The longer you contemplated it, the longer you thought about it, the more impossibly beautiful it became. And when we experience this world in this searing pain of suffering, if we can stop the mind for a moment and give us a little bit of space to remember that nature, to remember that this whole thing that we're walking through is perfect and divine, there's a great solace in that. And there's a great evidence of grace, of the divine toward us, because why else would things appear beautiful? Why else would things be inspiring to be around? Why else could you walk in the woods and feel such coolness and such peace in everything that you see? Such a harmony of existence. All of it sings God's name. All of it presents to us the truth of the divine. All of it is written in a universal scripture for all of us to look and read and grow from. The only thing required to read that scripture is our attention, our awareness of the divine presence. How wonderful your worship is, O slayer of birth and death. The sacred Om from space arisen is the resounding drum. My mind craves nectar day and night at Hari's lotus feet. O shower the waters of your grace on thirsty Nanak, blessed Lord, and may your hallowed name become his everlasting home. He sang again. In wisdom's firmament, the moon of love is rising full, and love's flood tide in surging waves is flowing everywhere. O Lord, how full of bliss thou art, victory unto thee. To look out in that, I mean, first, if you're going to look out and you anthropomorphize it, as it were, seeing it as all decorating the form of God is one way, and then just to see the love behind it flowing out in every expression. You know, that way that I like to look at those dead juniper trees in the desert, their twisted forms. And in those forms, you can just see the effort, the lifelong effort of that plant to reach for light, to reach for the sun, to reach for the divine, and to know that that story is written in our own bones and written in our own lives. All the suffering that we do are those cracks and those creaks in those dead junipers telling the story of our efforts to touch God, to touch an ideal, to touch our highest perception of love, of wisdom. Then at the master's bidding, Bhavanath sang, "Where is a friend like you, O essence of mercy? Where is another friend like you to stand by me through pain and pleasure, who among all my friends forgives my failings, bringing me to comfort for my grief, soothing my spirit in its terror? You are the helmsman who does steer life's craft across the world's perilous sea. Your grace it is alone, O Lord, that silences my raging passion's storm. You pour out the waters of peace upon my burning, penitent soul, and yours is the bosom that will shelter me when every other friend I own deserts me in my dying hour." This expression of grace, a beautiful expression of grace, bringing comfort for my grief and soothing my spirit in its terror. You know, we read that and we think, terror? What terror? You know, but oddly enough, terror is what underlies the surface of our pleasant nature in this life. When you are silent and you get below the level of mind that deals with your everyday working world, and you step deeper into that thinking, you see that there's a terror underneath as we cling to definitions of ourself that are comforting and that are well boundaried and defined to give us a sense that we understand, and even more important, a sense that we are in control. It's so important to people that we have free will. But who would want free will? We have this infinite spinning universe happening around us, and we think that it's our will that's important and that we want to be able to take charge. I mean, what a grace not to have that free will, to not be able to get into the level of trouble that we could, knowing nothing, really, knowing nothing about how to steer this life or what to do with this life. What is our purpose in this life? We make up different ones almost every day. I started off early in life thinking that I was going to be a doctor when I grew up. And then I went through a period where I thought I was going to be a singer. I was going to be the next Beyonce. Of course, Beyonce is a little too cool for me, I have to say. Back then, I was going to be the next Donny Osmond. So we keep redefining ourselves through life. And as we grow older, that keeps changing over and over and over again. And so where is the stability? Where is the strength coming from? It's coming from this divine, unchanging within. That is, like he describes here, that you have been me, you steer my life's craft, that you are a friend who has been with me through pain and pleasure, who among all my friends forgives my failings, bringing me comfort in my grief, soothing my spirit, that yours is the bosom that will shelter me. And where is that bosom? It's right here. It's within you. It's in your heart, that shrine therein. And that all of this language of art is describing the experience of finding your spirit within, finding your nature within, and finding the unchanging nature of that, that it's not spinning with this crazy chaos of everything else around us. It is always stable, and it is always true. It is always able to carry us forward. And it's where we take our refuge. It's where we find the bosom of the divine within the heart. And it is always, always a refuge, always a place of peace, always a place of silence. Narendra said to the master with a smile, referring to Bhavanath, "He has given up fish and betel leaf." And there's a little footnote. Hindu religious aspirants often renounce these since they are considered luxuries detrimental to spiritual progress. So Narendra says to the master with a smile that Bhavanath, after singing the song, is becoming a renunciate, turning everything over to the Lord. The master, "Why so? What is the matter with fish and betel leaf? They aren't harmful. The renunciation of lust and greed is the true renunciation. Where is Rakal?" So I love that, because in spiritual life, certainly around Vedanta societies, let me go ahead and say that and pay the price for it later. But this notion of like, what is important? Is it the renunciation of fish and betel leaf? Or it's much deeper than that. But we pay attention to these small things, to the easy things. Being a vegetarian is very popular, and Vivekananda says it's the higher ideal, but he also ate meat at times. Ramakrishna ate meat at times. Buddha ate meat at times. Jesus ate meat at times. So yes, it is the higher ideal if it's formed from peace and from a desire for nonviolence. It's a beautiful practice of that. But is it the one most important thing? Absolutely not. It just gives you a sense of control. It gives you a sense of mastery. Oh, I'm a vegetarian. And it's very comforting. And the danger in that is it's those little things like that feed our ego. We take on the ego of our accomplishments. Oh, I meditate every day. Oh, I meditate for 3 hours a day. Oh, I meditate for 6, Oh, my God doesn't need me to meditate at all. It's like all these different things. But always remember what the one most important thing is: love. Love is the one most important thing. And behind it comes the renunciation of all the things that don't manifest love, freely. The renunciation, the things of selfishness, that renunciation is important. So it's interesting that he links both of those at the very beginning, So the master immediately picks up on that. Betel leaf, what's the big deal with that? There's nothing wrong with that. The real culprit is your lust. The real culprit is your greed and your renunciation of those things. Those things will tear apart your manifestation of love. They will split your manifestation of love into hate and love and mix them and make you meter out rather cruelly the love that you have inside to give when it's infinite. So he throws that teaching out and then says, "Where is Rakal?" A devotee, "He's asleep, sir." Master with a smile. Once a man went to a certain place to see a theatrical performance, carrying a mat under his arm. Hearing that it would be some time before the performance began, he spread the mat out on the floor and fell asleep. When he woke up, it was all over. Everyone laughs. Then he returned home with the mat under his arm. So making fun of Rakal, falling asleep or being asleep in the master's presence. But making fun, making light of it. He's not really worked up about it. But there is that story in the Bible about the 10 virgins that are waiting for the bridegroom to come for the wedding party. And so they all have lamps and oil, and they were all standing there waiting, and 5 of them run out of oil and don't have any oil in their lamps. And so they run off to go buy some more oil. And in the meantime, the bridegroom came, and they all went into the party and locked the doors, and everybody who wasn't prepared was left outside, And so in spiritual life, take the advantage. Take the advantage, do your practice, do your meditations, do your prayers, do your loving deeds, do your kindness. Always keep your mind on that divinity, on that beauty, and be lifted up by it and move forward in it. And don't be caught sleeping. And sleeping in this sense is thinking this world is real and living like this world is real, because this world is dreamlike. This world is always changing. Things in this world, we see it as being so dependable, but look at it. Is there anything that is the same every time you look at it? Is there anything that stays the same from day to day? Everything is constantly changing. And so to be asleep is to take this constantly changing world as being real, and taking your presence in it as a body and mind as being real. That's the sleeping. And to live a life that indulges that error, is to run out of oil. It's to prepare for the wrong reality. Because if you think yourself the body, you're going to die. You're going to experience death. There in the New Testament of the Bible, this isn't the Vedic Christianity class, but nonetheless, there's a story in the Bible about oh gosh, I knew that was going to happen. Oh, it'll come to me in a minute. We'll come back to it. This is happening more and more. I'm starting to get a little worried about it. Ram Dayal was very ill and lay in bed in another room. The master went there to inquire about him. About 4 o'clock in the afternoon, some member of the Brahmo Samaj arrived, and the master began to converse with them. A Brahmo: "Sir, have you read the Panchadasi?" Or the Panchadasi, either way. Master: "At first one should hear books like that and indulge in reasoning. But later on, cherish my precious mother Shyama tenderly within, O mind." He's singing this song. "May you and I alone behold her, letting no one else intrude. One should hear the scriptures during the early stages of spiritual discipline. After attaining God, there is no lack of knowledge. Then the Divine Mother supplies it without fail." You see, so the scriptures are not the point. They are not the thing itself. They're a help. All of the scriptures of the world are a help to you, to bring you closer to your inner shrine. They point the way. Once you get your practices going and you start moving toward that inner way, the scriptures are not so necessary. The world itself will sing those scriptures to you. The experiences of life itself will teach you, once you've been established in that understanding of its nature, of the understanding of what the world actually is. Then it begins to teach you, and you can hear it properly. And in the end, the knowledge comes from within. Once the mind is silent enough, once your identity of self is pure enough, meaning that you're not so deeply associated with body mind, in that silence of the mind, all knowledge is available to you. Eckhart Tolle says that at enlightenment, you become aware internally of an infinite knowledge that is spontaneously available to you as you need it, so that you can navigate every moment perfectly. Right? So that comes. You don't get that by filling the mind with facts and figures and philosophies and ideals. Those are helpful for the way to kind of point you and give you the basic understanding. But once it's there, you go forward. Vivekananda makes that statement. He says, it's wonderful to be born in a church. It's miserable to die in one. And what he means by that is that these dogmas and doctrines and practices and congregations and preachers and ministers and monks and nuns, that's not the point. Our point is to transcend all of that. To be launched by those things. Church should launch you to God. You shouldn't stay in the church. You should transcend it. You get bigger than church. You get bigger than scripture. You get bigger than lifestyles and bigger than genders and bigger than ideas. You become love itself. That's the ideal. A child spells out every word as he writes, but later on he writes fluently. You won't have to think about things as hard as you do now. You won't have to discern as hard as we have to now. Once that sail is hoisted and the ship is moving toward the divine, we can sit back and enjoy the ride some. You can sit in your meditation and just enjoy some bliss, enjoy the company of the divine. The goldsmith is up and doing while melting gold. As long as the gold hasn't melted, he has to work the bellows with one hand, move the fan with the other, and blow through the pipe in his mouth. But the moment the gold melts and is poured into the mold, he's relieved of all of his anxiety. Doesn't have to do any of those things. Mere reading of scriptures is not enough. A person cannot understand the true significance of the scriptures if he is attached to the world. All right. And what does that mean, to be attached to the world? It means to draw your identity from the world. That's what it means to be attached to the world. To believe what the world says about you. You're a man, you're 58, you're this, you're that, you're any of these things, To take those on as an identity, that's attachment. And why is that a thing that keeps us from our freedom? Because if you believe the body's you, then you have to take care of it in that way. You have to answer all of its needs. And its needs are endless. And the more that you fulfill them, the more you want. This is where our vices lead us, If food is our thing, we become these giant megaliths of bodies walking around always hungry and wanting more, even though, we can barely walk, we can barely move. This is the new America, It's like, that's not the way. That's not the way. Renunciation is necessary for us to be free. We can't be enslaved to feeding and taking care of the body constantly. The mind is even more of a torture to us, with its moods and its angers and its jealousies and its needs and its insecurities and its constant changing nature. It doesn't necessarily multiply, but it changes from under you. I remember at one point, my favorite food was, oh goodness, forgive me for this, but was, what do they call that? Wiener Schnitzel in Germany. That was my favorite food when I was a kid. Not so much anymore. I hated peas back then, and now peas are one of my favorites. So you see, if you're serving the mind as your master, it's never going to be happy. It's just going to change. It's like, yeah, so you got me a bunch of peas. I don't like them. I want corn now, and that's how the mind is, and that's how it goes. And the deeper into you start getting frustrated with your own self, with your own mind. You start getting disappointed in your own mind and your own self. You see, you're not able to separate the two. And so you suffer depressions, and you suffer angers, and you suffer confusions. And then the body's making you suffer age and decay and aches and pains and illnesses. So if you identify with them, if you attach to them, to those notions, he says here that you cannot enjoy, you cannot really advance in spiritual life until you start understanding through discernment, not through a blind faith, through a discernment, through a paying attention. You begin to discern and understand that this sense of self is different from mind and different from body. And that it doesn't carry with it an age. It doesn't carry with it a maturity or a set of ideas. It is always free. And so through discernment, we're trying to learn this so that we can let go of the world and be relieved of all anxiety, as he says here. A person cannot understand the true significance of the scriptures if he is attached to the world. Though with intense delight I learned many poems and dramas, I have forgotten them all, entrapped in Krishna's love. You see, that's the fruit of all that knowledge. That's where it points to. That's where it leads to. That perfect love of Krishna, that perfect love of Jesus, of the divine, of God, of the universe, this nature of things. Kashyap enjoys the world. He is the leader of the Brahmos and practices yoga as well. Living in the world, he directs his mind to God. So that's the way. living in the world, like those songs that we heard just recently, just on the other page being sung. That living in the world means recognizing the presence of God in everything. It's recognizing it in everything. There's no limit to that. And to look at everything with that recognition of the divine love that it holds, the divine wisdom that it holds. And to understand that this life is a very intimate dance with our highest ideal that will grow us and to teach us. There's another scripture in the Bible in the Old Testament: as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. That when we know that God exists within all of us, then we learn from each other. We learn from our errors. We learn from the pain in life. We learn from our shortcomings. A devotee described the convocation of Calcutta University, saying that the meeting looked like a forest of human heads. The master: the feeling of the divine is awakened in me when I see a great crowd of people. Had I seen that meeting, I should have been overwhelmed with a spiritual fervor. Yeah, so because he would recognize the presence of the divine in everyone, and the room would be full of it. It would be everywhere. And that divine, he had that pure mind that would just instantly take him to that transcendent state. He would instantly just, boom, be taken beyond the whole. I know that quite often my view of a large crowd is like, get me out of here, or I'll go around, start judging the people who I think are being selfish or who are pushing there too hard in the crowd or whatever. You see, we break at the crowd instead of seeing this one body of mass manifestation of our divine beloved. We break them up into individual little pieces, and we start watching individual behaviors and individual outfits and individual faces and individual sexes, and then we focus on someone or something, and we get trapped in that, and it just gets smaller and it gets smaller and it gets smaller and it gets smaller, and pretty soon we're just caught up in
Maharaj,
it.
I have a question.
Please.
So where does one like you mentioned, even like I don't like crowds, but for me also it happens that I feel that it's a kind of a vairagya for me, being in the household and being in always being common thing is get invitations and then you go and then you're caught in this cycle of of gatherings. So I try and avoid it as a sign of that. No, I mean, this is not a good use of my time. But I guess that's a initial stage. That's like initial thing. When one can see the divine in everybody, then I guess it doesn't matter where you are. Am I right? Or no?
Yes, I mean it's one of those things that's not going to be easily defined into a set one answer for every situation. I think what you're doing is right in withdrawing from those distracting things as much as possible. In general, I mean, and more than that, watching out for your need for them. That's what we're trying to transcend. So as long as there's something that pull us, and they are something that get us attached or get us wanting more or enjoying more, that's the time for renouncing it and pulling away from it. If you don't need it, why do it? Why
is
go?
this like a duty of a householder with like a family? And like I think I need to talk to you at some other point in time, because I'm really kind of confused in this way. That when one is in a community or in a family, you're kind of forced in a way to be a part of everything, which then takes up all your time.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, there's not a one answer fits all, but the bottom line is God is everywhere present.
Right.
And God is always perfect. And so you go to that family gathering, and what do? You do your practice. You go there and you see Thakur and all the people sitting around the table. You refrain from gossip. You try and keep everything positive. You try not to talk about people's faults. Uh, you just go and you do your practice in the midst of it. Wherever you are, there you are. If mother is bringing you to those places, mother has things to show you in those places. So bring her and ask her and follow her and think of her. You know, you just go and do that. Go and do that practice. The things, we have to know ourselves, and the things that you're forced to do through duty, uh, you have to do them. And how do we do them? We do them as practice. We do them as worship, and we make the best of every situation. Knowing that the moment is divine, and if I can see it and understand it, then nothing can take me out of that. If they're not, then you practice it. That's all, and be the most loving person at your reunion. Be the kindest person at the wedding. All those kinds of things. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, there you are, and you're in the middle of God. So I would say that if
I'd rather be at the retreat.
yeah, I get that, and it's what you will.
Me too.
Yeah, and at some point we will be, but we have to become our own retreat at some point. And that happens just through our inner life, what goes on inside, not with what goes on outside. Grace is something we accept from within ourselves. Love is something we learn from within ourselves, so that everything that our interaction with the outside world is coming from within ourselves. It's not coming from the conditions or the circumstances. Even if you were at the retreat, the things that were making the retreat wonderful for you were coming from within yourself. They're not coming from the retreat. They're not coming from circumstance. And that's our goal, is freedom. We can't be free if we don't have our satisfaction built within. If we don't have our contentment coming from within, we can't be free. Because all retreats come to an end very soon. Actually, but they're very short. And thankfully, all parties come to an end.
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
Thank you, Maharaj.
yeah. Whatever situation you're in, find
I
the
can
reason.
tell you, mother has me running around with
Yeah.
skates on,
Well, yeah,
rollerblades on.
she does, Bindu, but it's creating a beautiful person. Don't forget that. I think everybody treasures you. So know that mother's doing all of this to you. Don't suffer for it. Be glad because she's creating something beautiful that's going to lead. Well, it's not going anywhere. It's creating the moment, a divine moment.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sunday, April 8th, 1883. It was Sunday morning. The master, looking like a boy, was seated in his room, and near him was another boy, his beloved disciple Rakal. M entered and saluted the master. Ramlal was also in the room, and Kishori, Manilal Malik, and several other devotees gathered by and by. Manilal Malik, a businessman, had recently been to Benares, where he owned a bungalow. The master: "So, you've been to Benares. Did you see any holy men there?" Manilal: "Yes, sir. I paid my respects to Trilanga Swami, Bhaskarananda, and others." "Oh, master, tell us something about them." Manilal: "Trilanga Swami is living in the same temple where he lived before, on the Manikarnika Ghat, near the Benimadhav minaret. People say he was formerly in a more exalted spiritual state. He could perform many miracles. Now he has lost much of that power." Master: "Oof, that's the criticism of worldly people, right? Worldly people are always looking for that judgment, always looking for the externals, the indications, never understanding the heart, never understanding the silent stillness. That, you know, these external gifts, they're only there for a period, and then they go. They're part of the passing world. These powers, these ideals, they weren't the thing itself. You know, when Jesus was doing his miracles, it wasn't for the effect of the miracles that he was doing it. You know, he was doing it to create faith. He was doing it to open hearts. He was doing it to teach particular parables and lessons in it. He was doing it to bring people to an understanding of the nature of things, you know, to say this world's not what it seems. You know, Vivekananda says there's no such thing as a miracle. You know, that all of these things happen within God. That is the criticism of worldly people. Manilal. Trilanga Swami keeps a strict vow of silence. Unlike him, Bhaskarananda is friendly with all. Master, did you have any conversations with Bhaskarananda? Manilal. Oh, yes, sir. We had a long talk. Among other things, we discussed the problem of good and evil. He said to me, don't follow the path of evil. Give up sinful thoughts. That is how God wants us to act. Perform only those duties that are virtuous. Master. Yes, that is also a path. It's meant for worldly-minded people. But those whose spiritual consciousness has been awakened, who have realized that God alone is real and everything else illusory, they cherish a different ideal. They are aware that God alone is the doer and others are his instruments. You see the difference there? You see, in the first sense, there's the sense of doership. I do virtuous things. I only do, practices. What's he say here? He says, don't follow the path of evil. So first of all, you're going to have to break the world into good and evil, decide what's evil and what's good, and then give up sinful thoughts, you know, so you have to be busy with doing that. That's how God wants us to act. So God is separate from you, pointing at you, telling you what to do. Perform only those duties that are virtuous. So you're going to have to keep in mind the idea of virtue and vice in there. So it's a gross path. It's important, and but it's for us if we're really trapped in the world and we're not at all. We're only barely interested in God. You know, it's for that stage. But the higher stage is to know that all of this is divine. He says, and to understand that God is not outside of you. God is deep within you, manifesting. And so your deeds are a manifestation of the divine, of love, of wisdom. And so you're not concerned about being the doer and choosing your acts as good or evil or right or wrong and whatnot. It's not a putting out the forest fire by stamping out one little flame at a time. You change it completely by understanding that this is coming from deep within and manifesting on the outside. So it becomes effortless. It doesn't become a long list of to-dos and a long list of be carefuls and a long list of don'ts. You know, it becomes a comfortable, peaceful, spontaneous manifestation, not of virtue, but of God in the moment. God alone is real and all else is illusory. This really points to us finding that within ourselves. We have to find God within. God is that unchanging part of you, that part of you that has been steady and the same through your whole life, the part of you that has maintained the owner of I, the owner of your name, your personality, your mind, right? And so by knowing this divine self, we focus and watch. We become the observer inside of the manifestation of God, even in our own self as it moves through the world. We come to realize that we're actually not doing these things. And if you're paying attention, I know that sounds so crazy to say that, but I mean, I've read an article that not too long ago, and I heard somebody else talk about it just this last week, that they've put these diodes all over people's heads, and they found out that your mind actually makes up a decision before you become consciously aware of that decision. You know, and if that's the case, where is free will? Free will it's an unknowable argument and an unnecessary one. It makes no difference whether we have free will or not. Vedanta says we all resolve into the divine in the end. We all go home. It's the nature of this experience to bring us home, to bring us to that world, to that unity with the self. And so this changing world is illusory. And you say, oh, how can this thing be illusory? Look, I can see what it is. I tell you, it's not what it is. When I was young, I worked as a dishwasher in a very opulent country club in Maryland, in Poolesville, Maryland. And so when I was posted there 9 years ago or so, again, one of the first things I did was drive out to see the town that I had spent a few years in. And I went out to the country club to see if anybody was still out there that I might know. And when I got out there, it was abandoned. The roof was falling in. And I went up and pushed my way through the broken front doors, and I went into the ballroom that used to hang with these beautiful chandeliers and these wonderful parquet floors. And there was no roof, and it was all wet, and things were popping up out of the wood was popping up from the floor. And I pushed into the kitchen where I used to work as a dishwasher in there. And oddly enough, there were still dishes on racks up there. Some of them were broken. It was dirty. And it was just, and I looked at all that. It was such a disconnect. It was such a strange feeling to see it familiar. I could remember and see everything as it was. And now it was a ruin. It was moldy and dirty and wet and stinky and falling in on itself. And I was like, God, how old am I? That was actually my first thought. I was like, good God, has so much time passed that the roof could have fallen in on its own like this? It was really a startling experience. And so this is how we understand the nature of this world. This is how we come to know this world is illusory. It's not what it seems. I'll remind you again of your potting soil, right? The only thing this world really is potting soil. Take anything that you love and wait long enough, and it's going to become potting soil. So it's not real. I'm not real. This body isn't real. It's temporary. It's going to fall and become potting soil, probably in a much shorter time than what I'm comfortable with. This world is changing, and that's its nature. And it's always been doing that. And it's beautiful. There's nothing there to fear or resist or push against. Be free. Know that this nature of yours has taken on uncountable bodies, played uncountable games, enjoyed uncountable experiences in this dream of the divine. But when it's over, let it go. Who cares? It's beautiful. But you can't keep it. You pick up that leaf that Greg showed us yesterday. You pick it up and it's beautiful, and you look at it, and it's wonderful to see its beauty in a moment, and it's just as beautiful to let go of it, because you won't be able to keep it. You hold on to that leaf and you come and look at it again in a week, and it'll be a brown, crinkly thing, right? And then eventually it'll break up and crumple in your hands and return to dirt. And so the beauty of this world is the moment. And what is the moment? It's God. It's the I am. So the beauty of this world is the moment. The temporary nature of it keeps your eyes on the moment, keeps your focus on the moment. And you learn that there's nothing there by trying to hold on to any of it. Whatever you grab will disappear. Whatever you want will become dissatisfying. Whatever you taste will become mundane. The beauty is in the moment, but not in the objects. The beauty is in the moment and the fact that this is divine manifestation, continually changing, unfolding, never repeating, a miraculous story of love. And that's what we're seeing in this very moment right now, in the words that are being spoken and the faces that we're looking at. The only thing that's beautiful here is God. The only thing profound here is God. The words, the smiles, the joys, the happiness, the history, those are all just pointers reminding us that the holiness is inside, and it's creating everything that we've ever loved on the outside. God alone is real, and all else is illusory. cherish a different ideal. They are aware that God alone is the doer and all others are his instruments, that we just move as God moves in the universe. We don't choose things. It looks like we choose things, and God, and Thakur says that God allows us a certain length of rope, like a goat tied to a pole, that within that 10 feet of rope, yeah, you've got some free choice in there. But even that's illusory, right? I mean, how much free choice do you have? You didn't choose that circle. You didn't choose that pole. You didn't choose that rope. You probably chose the goat, but who knows? Those whose spiritual consciousness has been awakened never make a false step because they have no egoism. They're not making decisions based on being a hungry body that needs to eat food and deny it from others. So they act from a place of an infinite love that has no need, no hunger, no desire for a particular, a self that recognizes itself in everything. And so it's nurturing and caring and aware of everything. And so no false step is made. That's how we know that the divine image is within us, that the image of God is what we are. They don't have a reason in order to shun evil. They are so full of love of God that whatever action they undertake is a good action. They are fully conscious that they are not the doers of their actions, but mere servants of God. They always feel, I am the machine and God is the operator. I do as he tells me. I speak as she speaks through me. I move as she moves me. So it's this constant awareness. It's this beautiful dwelling in the shrine of the heart and using the senses to look out at the play of God. From the wonderful contentment, strength, and security of knowing it has nothing to do with you. This is a story of love happening around you. It's like being in the movie theater. If you can sit there and remember the whole movie through, that you're not it, that you're not the person being haunted in the movie. The movie is a wonderful play. It's exciting and fun and beautiful, right? But if you get caught up in it, you weep, you scream, you whatever. And so that's what we are. We are in the movie theater watching this movie of God, as God displays this story. And we can watch it with just reminding ourselves, this is a play. This is a dream. It's a manifestation. And the light that is showing it is the light of consciousness within us, right? And so with that detachment, we enjoy life. Like Vivekananda said, we are not religious because we're denying ourselves the pleasure of living, the enjoyment of life. We're spiritual because we're learning how to enjoy life without getting caught in it, without getting tangled, so that we can be free. Fully awakened souls are beyond virtue and vice. They realize that it is God who does everything. Now, it's important not to take on that attitude before you know it. If you just go around saying, oh, I'm just a machine, God's the one who's going out and poking everybody in the ear, that may be true, but you also have to know that it's God that's going to slap you back. So, if you want to see this, you have to do a lot of practice to purify the mind. You have to weed out that sense of me and mine from your thinking in order to understand this truth. If you act on this truth before you've done that, you're just inviting a lot of suffering for yourself, because the world's going to react and teach you that you don't know that just yet, and that it's not yet time for that thinking, because you'll move without perfection. You'll make decisions without wisdom, and that never goes well. All right. That's a good place to stop for tonight. So let me turn off this magic button here.